Well, it's good to be here and to share with you some of my experiences with the Nantucket Basket and about your quilting. My wife's been on my case for almost 10 years about building a frapping mandel for the fireplace. And I said, listen, you've got 3 Nantucket Basket pocketbooks. There are not many women in the state of Georgia who have 1 pocketbook. Many would like to have it if they knew what it was. And now you are not satisfied unless you get a mantle. And so I gotta work on that thing to get that mantle going, so forth. Anyway, let me just introduce the fact that this is a basket of some sort. I think it's made out of grapevine or something like that. Don't anybody say I'm a basket case. I've been accused of worse, but anyway, this is another basket. I appreciate the craftsmanship and all of that. But this is a basket. This is a basket. This thing is 22 years old in July. My wife's been using it for more than 20 years. And I just refinished it the other day. And that's called a lightship basket, Nantucket lightship basket. Nantucket is an island off of Cape Cod, about 15 or 20 miles off of Cape Cod, stuck out there in the Atlantic Ocean. It's an old sailing village, island. That's where the boats most often docked during the early 1700s, Nantucket Island. And to ward off danger, they had a light ship, a lighthouse ship, that floated out in the bay between Nantucket and Cape Cod. If you remember anything about Massachusetts, you got this thing that comes down like this, and Nantucket Island is over here. This is up at Provincetown and so forth, and this is Hyannis, and this is Nantucket Island here. It became famous for its baskets. The fellows who tended the light ship for 6 months at the time would make baskets and then bring them back and sell them. They come from the old Algonquin Indian, I understand, and they are different from other baskets. And I want to show you some of the difference later. But let me explain how I became involved in the Nantucket basket. I've been involved in interfaith activities for many, many years. And years ago, when I lived in South Florida, I met a dear Jewish friend and her husband Howard and Eleanor Handelman. In the wintertime, they lived in their yacht, 60-foot Hatteras yacht, Turnberry Yacht Basin in North Miami Beach. Howard was an old Commodore from the Navy. He was what they called the 60-day wonder from Annapolis, and he was more the engineer on the ship rather than the commander of the ship. But Howard had that thing built for himself, and he and his wife lived on the yacht for the winter months down in South Florida. In the summer months, they went back to Cape Cod, where they had a home in Osterville. And we visited Eleanor and Howard many times. Eleanor had a pocketbook. And I just seen something on working. Actually, I think it was the 55th issue, back in '85 or thereabout. It had a bowl with a pagoda type top on it, and it was woven with caning, and it had walnut and all of this around. And I said, that is the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. I mean, it had class, it had dignity, it was something else. It was no basket. It was a piece of art. And I told Eleanor, I said, Eleanor, I really saw that thing. And they mentioned about the Nantucket Baskets, and they showed you how to sort of start on that thing here. And I said, man, and I want to make one. She knew that I'd worked on things because I'd made some things for Eleanor. Ikebana, you know what Ikebana is? It's a Japanese modern art kind of a display of flowers. I'd made her several of those things. And she said, hey, would you like to take my basket and check it out? See how it feels and how to make it. He said, you won't believe what it cost. He said, that thing cost $800. And it was a knockoff. It was, in that sense, it was well built. These are what we would call knockoffs because they're not built in Nantucket, and they get rather snotty up there, you know. If it ain't made in Nantucket, it ain't no Nantucket basket. And so I have to say that these are made in the Nantucket style.
So like Vidalia onions, right?
Oh yeah. But anyway, Eleanor gave it to me, and I checked it out, and I figured it out. And a couple of little articles I found, and I said, I'm going to try that darn thing. And I tried a little old 2-bit mold that I had. It wasn't worth a frap. And so then I decided, well, I just might as well go ahead and make something. Now, Perkins out of Connecticut, they sell molds of all sorts. Pretty expensive, $75, $100 for a mold. But I just built mine together. You know, I have a set of oval molds, I have a set of round molds. There are a lot of molds here that you have to have. And of course these finials, I'll show this also. The ivory here, these are the molds. The caning over here shows you how to, the source of material. Over here on the back side represents the ivory, bone ivory, and other finials that are needed. And really the only thing that has been bought are the finials, and here the whale and the peg on the front. I made everything else. Okay, you got that down? Yeah. Okay, so I started with my own molds and ended up doing fairly well. One day Eleanor said, this hasp here, and it's a horse, it easily wears, and it cracks, and it breaks. She said, the fellows up in Nantucket said, well, Eleanor, you're going to have to take all of this stuff out. You're going to have to remove all of this stuff. And she said, would you like to try it? I said, yeah. But I said, you don't need to do that, I bet you. I bet you don't need to do it. You can do it without taking it all apart. And so she gave it to me. Next day I brought it back to her. What this is a piece of lace, leather strap, with fine caning wrapped around it and dried, and then looped and stuck in here. That's all it is. And it's put into the wall here between the two loops. But anyway, that essentially is a part of the Nantucket Baskets. But let me give you some points. I've introduced the sermon today. I have 4 or 5 points. And then afterwards, we'll take up an offering and go home. I guess the beginning point is you got to have some molds. I made these molds. I figured out yesterday it's a little off-center. I'm going to have to remake it because it's a little wobbly. I didn't have the lathe, but this one is pretty accurate. And I use this little stand, and that helps a great deal. So you start with a mold. You need some quarter half round, 3/8 half round caning material for the rope around here. See, this is a 3/8, this is a 1/2 inch. This is made from flat oval caning. And it's got to be oval. If it's flat, Then when you take your caning and it comes down, then that sharp part is going to crimp the stuff. So you need that oval. You always have an odd number of ribs, always. 49, 51, 53, 55. That way you can circle it. Otherwise, you're going to come face to face with yourself with an even number. You won't be able to do it. And so you have to have an odd number. You begin with a base. This is mahogany. This is cherry. This is a little jig I made several years ago. I'll cut the basic round piece here or the oval piece, whichever the case may be, and I'll put it in here, cramp it down good. Put a chuck in first a slot bit in my drill, turn it up as fast as I can go, and then I'll cut a little slot in the base that's just, say, an eighth of an inch up from the bottom, so that I can slip these ribs in there. And then I'll have enough room left over that I can then take this out and put in an OG or one of those finer pieces of thing. As I did here, I did not here. And I clamp it down and keep moving around. Somewhere along the way, you're going to need to make a handle. And for example, here you go. Try that. See, now that's an oak piece, and oak is a horse too, because it. And I think that I got stuck the other day, and I believe that's poplar, but and I'm still working on the oak because I like the oak better. Let me show you how to do that. I found that if you take the wood and you cut it just like you want it, then you can bend it pretty quickly. And here we go. And it works perfectly. I shape my handle first. Now here's the trick of it. On the thing that I'll show you later, sort of my surprise for you. I had to make that darn handle 3 or 4 times because the first time I made the handle, it was too short, and it hit right here, and I know it's going to beat that basket to death in 20 years. I'd rather it beat here. I'd rather it beat on the floor or on the table. And so I've changed it. So you've got to determine the length down so that it hits along the bottom and then around. What I found out was on the baskets like this, and I'll show you later, an 17 3/4 or an 18-inch between centers, between holes worked well. You cut your blank like you want it, with whatever design you want on the end. Drill your holes, mark the distance between the 2 holes, find the center. Now you need a template or a mold for your handle. I like a graceful arc. I don't like so much that, but I like something like this, or something like this, you know. But the important thing is to put the center part in the top of the mold. And then what I've done on this, Jim, you can catch it. I made it especially for this basket here. Kept my center part, and to have identical arcs. I ended up taking 2x4s, to attach them together, cut the arc on, and then with my disc sander, I smooth them the same so that they've got the exact same arc. Otherwise, it will pick it up. If one arc is like this and another arc is like that, it will pick it up. It will pick up a crack, it will pick up a dimple, it will pick up anything. And then once I do that, then I take my tape measure and measure around 9 inches, 9 1/4 inches, 10 inches, 11 inches, so that I'll know how long to go. Okay, now then.
Wayne,
Yeah.
Wayne, are you steaming the wood or soaking it?
I've been soaking it. Sometimes I would take some boiling water and pour on it, and I had good results with that. But see, this thing has been in the water for a day or so. That's a good thing to try. Steaming it is good because it does do a lot of work pretty quickly. I was experimenting with it and so forth. And so steaming is good though. Soak it in cold water and then steam it, and then that will activate it. Take your center mark. You see the center? I don't know whether you can see the center mark. Do you pick up a center mark at all on that?
I don't see it yet, no.
You see it now?
No.
We believe you. We believe you.
We'll leave it.
Okay. What I do, I take the center mark.
We believe.
I put it right here on my center mark here. And to help myself, I stick it right in here. Let me get around here so you can see it, Jimmy. Jim. This is the reason I have it. I'll come over here about at 18, and I'll come around. No, it's not quite there. Not quite there. Not quite there. Too much. Good enough. Good enough. All right. On a piece of wood, and this is aggravating because, okay, now you see it's split right here. What you can do it the other way. You can do it against the split, and it would be a different. It's going to still crack. I'm afraid it's going to crack. That's the danger of working with this stuff. It does crack.
You just soak that in hot water for a couple of days? Is that what you use?
Hmm?
You just soak that in hot water or something?
Yeah, hot water would be good. And then what I'll do, I've even come back and, in fact, that oak piece you got there, that had a split out, and I glued it back, and you can hardly tell it. Okay, here you go. Here you go. Now what you need to do here, you need to come in with another clamp and clamp it down here. Then you come over here. And on the other side over here, I'll come over here. Now if
You're not quite down to the top though.
yeah, I can put one here, but I don't have another clamp.
I got you.
But see, it will push it down, and it will hold it. And let me just leave it like that, and you need to give a certain amount of spring here, because this will spring out. So I usually come in about 1/2 inch on the bottom, pull it in 1/2 inch, let it dry, and then when it springs out, it's about like I want it. So experiment. So you see, you can see this will be all right. I didn't bring a wedge, but that would be all right. You see that? You see how that works. Now you let that sit and soak, and let that sit for overnight, a day. The longer you let it sit, 24 hours long enough. 24 hours, quite long enough. It will work. Okay, now I want to show you how to get started, because that can be a real horse too. I take the caning material and I will soak it in water. I'm going to start with this little piece here because it's going to be you got to have a lot of little pieces here anyway, because it's so hard and so difficult. Okay. this has been, when you're talking about a round piece, you take your ribs and you put a taper on it. Because you see, here's the issue here. The issue that defeats you. You've got what amounts to a 6.5 inch out here, into which you've got to put an odd number of ribs at 1/4 inch a piece, with 1/8 of an inch between it, which gives you 3/8 of an inch. You got to divide 3/8 into 6.5 inches, and not 6.5 times 3.14 to get you the circumference of it, and you'll end up with about 51 or 52 at 1/4. But they go into a disc that is 3.5 inches. There ain't nowhere in the world that you're gonna get 51 or 53 1/4 inch ribs into a 3.5 inch circumference. And so what you do, you taper it. I usually come up with about a 1.5 inches to cover the arc, and I put a wedge on it, leaving about 1/8 of an inch on the end. Now, and then I fit it, I wet it, and then I let it dry. Now, I failed to mention earlier, but I do need to mention it now for you. When you make your little disc for the bottom, you will want to drill a hole inside the groove. Oh, you know, maybe 1/4 of an inch or so deeper than the hole is, the groove itself. That is to lock the caning in. And I found the best way to do this is leave one of these open. Okay, here, and I'll take this thing and bend it like this. I'll find and mark that hole again. Stick it in there. Okay. Now then is where you start sewing. Because now you got to come in here. I usually take it like, I usually go from left to right, because I guess that's left and right-handed stuff. Then you start this way. Because this is the hardest part. It's like wrestling an octopus. See, you gotta get that thing going. Hold it when you get it. First time. See that? Now hold it. Now then leave about 1/8 of an inch between the ribs. You see? Hold that. Now then come in here. Pull up this one. Stick it in like this. Thread it.
How deep was the groove that the caning goes into?
Huh?
How deep was the groove?
That's about 1/2 an inch. About 1/2 an inch. It's the thickness of the bearing, you know. Anyway, it's
Oh, I see, of the...
you know, it's heavy, yeah. But
That
then
just holds it, that just holds that in.
that whole, no glue. I did use just a bit of glue on the last basket I made, but it was to hold down some frayed ends that was at the end, and I need, okay, you keep coming down, use your fingernail, push that stuff in, keep it about 1/8 of an inch, and then as you keep going, you know, you're gonna keep on going,
Take you a while.
round and around you go,
Patience, grasshopper.
and then by the time you get 3 or 4 loops, you can pull this thing tight, and it'll handle it.
Is the first, after you get the first 3 or 4 rows on it, is it easier? I mean, it gets easier
Yeah,
because
yeah.
once you get it straight and you got, everything's in line and,
Yeah, and then you're out. I'll show, for example, here you can take that rubber band off and just it'll take about 10 hours to weave this. It took me about 60 hours to weave those because it's a horse. I mean, with the oval one, you've got a changing radius, constantly changing. Down here on the end, it's almost like a toothpick. The thin part's got to be like a tooth. Around here, it's just a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And on the side where it's a little flat, it's the full width. and then it keeps changing, and so you may have 4 or 5 different cuts that you've got to put together. But let me keep on doing this, and I'll show you. You keep on. Once you get about 4 or 5 ribs, 4 or 5 rounds on this thing here, it's pretty easy. Then you can start over with removing the rubber band and handling it without any difficulty. You have any questions on this thing here now?
What's the biggest mistake that a beginner will make at this point?
Over, under.
Over under, that is a point, because if you miss, in fact I did it just a while ago, I went under rather than over, and so you got to do, now that's all right, What's going to be a horse is when you get around here and you've done gone all the way around,
2 unders.
and
You missed one.
and then you got to unravel it. But see, if you get 3 or 4 of these, then you can pull this thing pretty hard. Pull it tight, keep it 1/8 of an inch, keep it straight. Keep it straight. You don't want to. You want it pretty good, and you want about 1/8 of an inch all the way up. And so and at this point you can move it around without any trouble at all. It's very easy to do. See? Any questions?
On the piece of cane that you're weaving, I presume it's longer than that usually or not. Do you have to re-wet it or anything?
No. Well, I mean, if you take all day, you probably want to do it. But you're working on about an hour. It'd be plenty palatable. But this is getting started, and 2 or 3 rounds. It's getting good and tight. But the most important thing now, Jimmy, as you mentioned, is making sure the ribs are vertical. And that's the reason I cut grooves with the bandsaw, to give me a vertical line. So I try to keep it as vertical as I can to make it. And of course,
Explain the grooves. I missed that.
huh?
Vertical grooves.
He's going this, you're going, you. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you can line up so you can keep your.
Yeah, I can. But then again, the more you do it, I mean, hey, if you've been in woodworking for 25 years and you can't tell when a line is off key, then you haven't been in it. I mean, if you can't judge an inch by just looking at it, if you can't pick the middle of a foot and miss it by a 16th of an eighth of an inch, come on, take it seriously. You ought to be something wrong with that thing. You can look, that thing's out of center, and so you can get it. But this helps a great deal, and after a while, if you do this enough, you can look at this thing and say, hey, that looks all right. And you want it tangent. Now, for those of you who may have forgotten what tangent is, in other words, it comes straight in to the hole, not like this to the hole. You want it to be square. Tangent is square with the hole. Insert it in here. That's off. That's tangent. You want it to come line up with the center, not to this side. And it's that part that you want to keep straight. Okay.
I have a question.
Latin,
Huh?
when you got another strand.
Well, I'm fitting to get to that. If you got any more questions,
What's going on when you take that bottom piece off?
do what?
You take that round circle off?
Oh, when I finish the whole thing.
I know, but
You talking about the rubber band or this?
That.
This?
How's all that gonna hold in place?
Oh, it's gonna, this reason you got a little extra here. You take it, my handle here, and you take it and you drop it down, and that pops out of the mold. That's the reason the mold has a taper on the side. And if that doesn't work, put a bolt in there and loosen it up, and then tap it down to push it down
Does that disc stay with the bowl?
Yeah, the disc stays with the bowl, and then you put a plug in it.
Okay.
Put a plug in. Okay, let me show you now.
Did I understand that as you go
You want
around,
me to do it?
do you narrow your thread? I'm gonna refer to that as the thread. As you go around the basket, depending on the curve?
It will take the form of the mold. And this is what you're talking about. That's unique with the Nantucket basket, but there are others like it too. But Nantucket began with a mold. Every Nantucket basket made according on that mold will be about the same.
So the only ones you narrow
Staves.
are the up and down ones?
The ribs.
Yes.
Yeah, you compute, you take the circumference, find out how many you're gonna have to have, and then you divide it by 3/8 or whatever, a quarter of an inch. If you're using a quarter of an inch, add an eighth of an inch to it. If you're using 3/8 inch rib, add an eighth of an inch to it, and then divide that into the total circumference, and you'll get the number of ribs that you're gonna need. And always keep it at an odd number. And then when you taper them all and get them all set, then you can start on it.
How do you taper the ribs?
I use a table sander, and I use a belt sander on the table sander. I just take it down there and try to keep it, clean your fingernails too. But that's one way to handle it. And you've got to do that. And otherwise it won't fit in there. And that's very important that it fits in there. Correct. Yeah.
The little disc that's on the bottom there, that's your bottom or whatever, you say you cut a groove in that to accept this beginning cane and to decide, how does the beginning cane stay in that groove
You have a hole. You drill a hole into,
for each one of the?
no, you
Just-
drill a starter hole into the groove.
Okay.
Maybe a quarter of an inch, half an inch. You don't worry about it. You don't need to go all the way through, but, stick it beyond the groove.
I guess what I'm getting
And
at,
then you stick your cane into that slot. See, I had a mark where the hole was.
oh, I see. Oh, and what holds it in that little disc
Friction.
is the
Friction.
weaving. Oh,
Friction,
okay.
whatever.
See, can you get
It's not
through?
glued in.
The weight,
Then when he pulls it, it's,
yeah.
Pulls it into that. Oh, okay, cool.
When you first start, hold that first round, and then the second round.
I see.
And then by the time you get to the third round, the bending had pretty well set it. Well, you can jerk it out, but not as easily as you could the first time.
That's interesting.
Okay, let me show you now. Any other questions about that?
once you create your mold, or you buy a mold or whatever, and once you do it the first time, as long as your supply is that size, you know how many things you're gonna put on it, right?
You know approximately. Oh, you can, the best thing to
That's
do.
what I'm saying, you've labeled it on the bottom.
Yeah, best thing to do is quarter-inch ribs,
51, 55,
51,
whatever.
3/8 inch rib.
Okay.
The bigger the basket, the bigger the ribs.
Oh, okay.
And you keep a note there somewhere.
Wayne, when you weave that in all the way around, do you use one piece for each layer, or do you use long pieces?
This thing starts out, I think it's about 10 feet, 8 or 10 feet. 6 to 12 feet is what it is. That's very impractical on this, and so I just cut it about 3 feet, and then I splice it or tie it together, But for example, here, I think on this one, it was about 6 or 8 feet, maybe 9 feet.
With one end, how do you begin the other one, keep it together?
Okay, here's what I'm going to show you right now. See, here is that last piece. Can you see it, Jimmy?
Yeah.
Okay, what I usually do, and I found that it's the best thing to do, you cut it off so that it always is on the top of a rib. I usually go back 3 ribs. In fact, I've got to go back so as to hide the opening piece under a rib, in between a former caning. So what I do, I come in here, I go back about 3 times, I put it up, and then I get it on top. Then I get it on top of the last one, and then I pull it up, came loose, so I had to start over, which is no problem.
Do you buy those pieces at a place that makes them and just sells them? The pieces that you thread in there?
Perkins sells all of this stuff in a patch, a vat of caning. This is super fine caning. The caning comes in all kinds of sizes, and you can get, you would say, give me some quarter inch oval, give me a 3/8 inch half round, and give me super fine. And they'll send you a whole slew of it. I don't know, maybe 150 feet, 200 feet, you know, and comes in strips of 10 or 12 feet, you know. And what I do, I usually take them apart and then put a rubber band around each one of them, and then when I'm ready for it, I just throw it in a vat and soak it. Okay, let's get back to this now. Any other questions?
That's a different color
Okay.
just because it's wet.
Damp. Okay, now I've got it anchored there. Now I hold it down. Come around. Be sure it gets on the top of the next piece. Sometimes you may even have to come in like this and pull it up. Oh, there we go again.
Not cooperate.
Why don't you go back one more and put it in? Why don't you go back one more rib?
Well, you don't need to. You need to. The important thing is to cover the beginning of the new one and hide the end of the old one. That's the idea. And 3 will do it. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, here we go.
Where's the end of the old one right now? Where's the end of the old one?
Right there, it's 2.
See it?
No.
You see it right over there?
Oh, okay.
Okay, now then I come in here, and before I tie it down, I work it over the old piece. Now then I hold the first piece, pull it gently,
Put it in his pocket knife.
no, I gotta keep it slid underneath. Once you get it done, you will have to look to find a splice.
Imagine it works easier with everything a little damp still too.
Okay, there you go.
If they were both damp.
There you go. Okay,
Yeah, that
now,
helps too.
now then, and you keep coming. Keep holding it for a couple of ribs. Hold it down, pull it tight with your fingernails. Slide it down.
Next row,
You see? Now it's ready to go. Now you can just keep going. You see what I'm doing?
Goes faster now.
How many baskets a year do you make?
I made about 25 or 30 of them, but I don't make them annually, you know.
Right.
I make them generally for my wife and for my daughter-in-laws and granddaughters. I don't know whether they would want to use them. But see here, see how it fits in? And of course, since these things the ribs tend to move this way, keep pulling them back straight.
That loose end underneath, when you finish your basket and take it off the frame, will it show under there inside?
No, because it is covered by the overlap. That's hidden under the outside rib, you see?
Okay, oh yeah.
The other one's
Yeah.
on the inside.
Yeah.
Covered.
And of course, before you finish everything, after you finish doing most of this stuff, and you're ready to put the final finish on it, you take an alcohol burner. I've used a propane lighter, and you burn the fuzz off because you've got a lot of fuzz on it, and that's one way to keep it going. Any questions on this?
About what is that, like, say you wanted to make a basket about that, so what does the caning material cost?
That's the interesting thing. I computed that thing down. I think one time I got it down about $3 worth of caning, $3 or $4 worth of caning. You probably got
It's all time.
you probably got I don't know.
No, I'm not.
Let me show you here now. I've got more money in the ivory than I have in the caning. I probably got $5 worth of caning. But the ivory was about $60 or $70. Bona. This is about $35, and these are $35 or so, and that's about $18 or so. But and this was a blue ribbon thing down in Georgia, and also here is somebody gave me this. For example, had an advertisement about Nantucket Baskets. You see, mine are different in a sense. If you'll notice, in Nantucket, mine. But I'm using artistic talent. This one is 4 years old, 5 years old. 5 years old.
You say that ivory is bone?
Bone ivory. Yeah, it's not real ivory because of the laws, so forth. And let me let you pass this around. That's that one is 5 years old. And this one here is 22 years old. And as I mentioned to you, I just refinished it the other day, and
When you get done, do you spray them with a lacquer or something?
I use a lacquer. Yeah, that's what I was talking about the other day with coffee thing. See? Okay. You got any questions on the weaving?
Yep.
Okay?
Is the top just as hard as the sides?
Yeah. The top is a mold.
Look, it'd be like it would be harder because
The top is a mold too.
it's flanged out. You never get out. You never get weaving good. And then you got that roll.
Yeah. The top is a mold, which is of course essentially the same dimensions as the top of the basket. You just trace the top of the mold onto a piece of wood and make your mold the size of the trace, and then you put a taper on it. But you need an edge on the side because see those ribs got to come down, and then and it is tough because you don't have much of a place for a rubber band because you're dealing with stuff like this, about like that. But you may make it like this, and then when you get it done, then you'll cut them all off. And while we're on that subject, let me show you this. Just pass it on around. This is a measuring jig that I made. What I do when I finish with it and get it exactly like I want it, and put the rib around it, I mean the inner and outer rings around it, I'm getting ready for it. I'll put the basket, take the basket off the mold, put it here, and run it around a precise height. See, I can move this anywhere I want to, and I just run the, if you can envision, take the bolt off, turn this over, and then roll it around here, and it'll mark the edge. Then I nip off the excess, and then I put my outer and inner ring around that.
Looks like the saw piece, looks like they're nailed, it looks like.
What is that?
That piece you put around the top.
Oh, the piece I put around the top, I have a brad, a escutcheon pin. Those are escutcheon pin. Now you can, of course, they will be woven into it. And so it's not a problem. When it's woven into it, it's going to stay. But if you really want it to be something, what you do is to drive the escutcheon pin through one of the ribs. And now you've got the nail of this pin going through a rib, through the rim, and it's there. It ain't gonna fall off. Now here's a point too why I got it, James. I went all over Fort Lauderdale, Florida, trying my darndest to find some kind of cap for this thing right here. I said, where is, I went to a boat place that had brass and all of this stuff and caps. I said, that's got to be a cap or something. I thought it might be one of those little caps that you put on an axle for a kid's toy, you know. You crimp it on there and it won't come off, you know. No, it's not a boat. Now, let me show you some stuff. Here's a Japanese import. See how wampus that handle is? And yeah, and all of that stuff. I picked it up at Goodwill for $2.20. They didn't know the difference. But see, that's a Japanese import. And you know what that thing sells for at Cracker Barrel or something? $290.
It's Chinese, by the way.
Yeah.
Hong Kong.
All right, if you want to buy one on eBay, there you go. Nice little basket. But feel it, feel it. You can crush it. You can almost crush it. But, I mean, just the side here, $7. $7. But see the bolt? And you can almost see through it. And anyway, I finally figured it out. What they did, they rigged it up, put the brass escutcheon pin through it, nipped it off, put a brass washer on there, and a drop of soda. And that's it. That's it. And I'll show you one I made that's sort of my surprise that I made, and I'll show you how it worked. But that's it. You put that drop of soda on there, and you never need to take it off, because one thing you got to do, you got to be prepared to repair that thing. Don't ever make anything that you can't repair, because then you know you got something else going on. But
so all the hasp and stuff you said is basically leather with real fine, whatever that
same
is.
caning, super fine caning, wrapped around it, and then what I usually do, take a little spring clamp one end, and then wrap it around good and tight, pull it together, keep going, and then I'll clamp it down to the beginner. All right. Any questions on that?
Are you gonna cover the ring that you make on the top? In other words, these two rings, are they two half ovals?
Yeah, they have ovals. I'm going to show you how to, what you're going to do. Let me pull this out. Here's a little basket I started on some time ago. I've got something over here. Let me see now. Oh yeah. And one thing about it too now, those handles, you know, if it doesn't work right, stick it back in some water and soak it again. You can use it over again. This is a piece of a half round. What you do, you make a scallop on it, scallop edge. What you do is once you're through, I usually take something like this, put it around and measure it. Add a couple of inches for the scallop, for the splicing.
You have to soak that too? Oh,
Yeah, you soak it, you know. This was a piece that was bent this way. Because you see on the round parts, you got the outer part is like this, the inner part is like that. And so what I did, I just, you know, because it's wobbly, but see when you put it in a mold, when you tie it down, it will straighten up. And so what you do is you get the diameter of this, and then cut you a piece of ribbing or half round, add an inch or so for the splice. And then with your table sander, slice them down, and you end up with a angle cut on it. Can you see that, Jimmy?
No. Got it.
See, there's the inside piece.
Don't get too close, I can't focus.
Okay, there's the inside piece.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
So that's, and then let it dry. Now what I've done on occasions, I've even put a toothpick in it. Just drill a little hole in there and put a little toothpick in it if it ever pops loose. But this is the only glue that you really use. Now then, let me show you how you're going to do this. See, I've already cut this. See?
That's your fancy.
That marks it, then you cut it. That is all high. Because you say, well, what's that for? Because, and I had one that was like that. This height is that height, and you got an 18-inch handle. One side is higher than the other, so you're going to have the handle. And so you need it all the same height so that your handle will fit nicely. Okay, I'm ready to go.
What do you cut your
Hmm?
What do you cut your ribs with?
Oh, I'll do this with a bandsaw and then I'll table saw, but with the ribs, I use a fingernail clip. Just tip it in there.
Yeah.
I got little nibbles all over the place at the house. And I told my wife that I'll clean up the den when I finish this, but I don't know whether she'll trust me. She should after these many years. But then she knows me more than anybody else does, so that may be the reason she doesn't. But anyway, one thing characterizes the Nantucket basket, another thing, is the binder cane. The binder cane, many baskets are like this. But Nantucket basket has a piece of binder cane on top of it to cover up the gap. Okay. Now here's where you begin to lace it. And what I've done, and this is where you might need to use a little bit of glue. What I do, I start from the inside because it's easier to go through these holes this way than it is to try to find it this way. And so what I do, I'll take the end of it, and always keep in mind that you got to keep the hard surface of the cane on the outside. You don't want to twist it. So what I do, I'll bend it this way, stick it between the inner. Let me just pull this up, Jimmy, so you can get a shot of it. Between the inner and the outer. Then I'll take this and I'll begin my manipulation of it. This is going to be a little difficult because you've got to you've got to bend it against its will. The caning that you use, it's going to bend anyway, so it's no problem. But with this, you got to bend it this way. Okay, let me get my jig going again. Okay, now then, I came out again. Okay, now then, here we go. Come around. Always keep the thing on the top. Let me find I got an ice pick here somewhere that I brought. Because you have got to. There we go. You've got to find your hole in there to go through. And this too, let me find that ice pick. This too works well with, once you get it started, it's gone and it's ready to go. There we go. Once you get the outer ring and the inner ring going, it's ready to go. Okay, this is just a piece of rod that I tapered on. Okay, now let's get going. I'll get with you, Jimmy, just a second. Okay. Find you an opening. Thank you. Bring this sucker around here. Pull it in. Okay, now you see where we're going. Okay, hold it good and tight. Make another loop. Find an opening. Barge in there somewhere. Yep. Sometimes that bottom ring, that inner ring, will tend to block the opening, and so you're not really forcing anything as much as you are, moving it. Moving the inner ring back a little bit so you can get a clearance there.
That's because of the pressure of your finger on the other side, hold it in.
Okay, you see where we're coming now. See, that's one of the problems with this caning. If it gets turned around, then you're gonna have to flip it over and get it back right again. And it can really be a horse.
What have you got against this poor horse?
Be careful.
Had you rather me say a bitch? Or had you rather me say something else?
That's what happens when you sit in the front row.
Careful what you ask for.
Is your face always that red? I mean, she's bright red. Look at this. You thought my bald head was going to shine. I mean, She's not asking any more questions. You see that?
Kind of makes you glad you can, doesn't it?
Yeah, right.
You see where we're going with that now?
She does.
Yep. Well, only the tension of drawing that inside and out ring together is always holding that on there. You don't glue it on at all.
I may glue the first part because it's kind of hard to get it going in there. Sometimes they'll take the first time and stick it under here, stick it under the caning, and sometimes it frays up on the side. So I put a little drop of glue so it won't snag anything. But you don't really use glue. Any questions on that? Okay.
So on the purse, you have to do that theoretically twice, because you got it both on the cover and the bottom. You got that. And you're using half round. You're using a dowel, cutting it in a
Well, if you can bend it. See, this is easily bendable.
Oh, so that's cane.
Yeah.
Okay, half round cane. Okay.
This is rattan.
Rattan. Okay.
Okay, let me show you what any questions now?
I have one question. Anytime during the process, is there ever a need to re-soak the cane?
Oh, you'll know. And the important thing is try to keep it from crimping. Now we're trying to keep it from doing this. Because see, that way it breaks the hard surface on the outside. But you'll tell if it's pretty pliable, oh, it's all right. But when it gets hard and stiff, well, I need to then take a wet rag. I've done that as a wet rag. All right, here's what I made, and I made this primarily for an art show that I'm going to put this in down in Perry. This is and it's made on this mold, and I made it this week, and I'm going to call this a Nantucket Basket purse for the distinction. And see, this has a bag, and you see how the handle came out? See, you want the handle to be pretty well, you don't want it to be like that Japanese, unless that's the design. And I could have made it a little bit shorter so that it would hit this down here. But when I first made it, it hit right along here, and I said, that thing gonna wear. In 15 years, it's gonna be gone. And so, anyway, this is a removable bag, and the versatility of this is that it says Velcro on the bottom. The versatility of this is that you can change bags. Make another color bag, whatever you want. And
so you made the bag?
No, I didn't make the bag. I was a little stuck on that round part of the bag. And but now that's got about, I don't know, I bought a new can of lacquer, and I lacquered one of the pocketbooks a couple of times. And the rest of it went on that, and so that may have 6 or 7 cases of lacquer. And when that other basket from eBay comes around, you can see the difference in the stiffness of a basket that has been sprayed several times with lacquer versus a bag that has not been sprayed that many times.
No, I noticed, like, the original one, we noticed we could see it when I was holding it, she was holding it, that it seemed like there was bands of color. But that's just the material, the variety of the material. Like this one seems to be more in the grayish, kind of a gray.
This is, I'm gathering.
This one too. You don't notice it until you start.
I'm gathering that, I think when I made this one, I don't think they had Nantucket basket reeds or caning. But then when I bought this a few years ago, thank you, Jim, they had a Nantucket caning kit, which is more blonde, and they're all the same in the tone. But I think also in checking things out, I found that, yeah, that one there would be borderline antique Nantucket. Because the antique Nantucket has a patina and it has a color to it that is
Age.
yeah, it has an age appearance to it. That's what I was talking about a while ago. When that thing comes around, you know, in the first place, that's about 1/8 of an inch caning. And look at the gap. See, that's 3/8 inch between each cane, each rib. You see? And I think the records I have, the information I had was to try to maintain 1/8 of an inch. Because that way it gives it a tight groove. You can see through it. Yeah, I can see through it. But and this is the difference also and this has several layers of varnish and lacquer, and this does not. So this is the basic thing about it. If any of you want to borrow a mold, I'll be glad to. Yeah, Bill.
Where did the original guys get the cane?
I think it probably came, the word was in the 1700s they were using ash and stuff. And then these boys got together and started using the rattan. I don't know when that was, but probably around at least 50, 75 years later, maybe. Because these fellows, I suppose, on the ship did not have access to ash and the axe that they used to split that stuff, but they had plenty of caning, and they could rip it out that way.
Where'd they get the cane?
Huh?
Where'd they get the cane?
Well, they were center of transportation. They were center of Nantucket was a major seaport town, and they would have all kinds of stuff coming in. Furniture maker.
Caning was used for chair seats for.
But yeah, from Philadelphia, the chair makers in Philadelphia.
But originally it comes from the Orient.
Yeah, it's a rattan kind of thing, but it would also be the New York and especially Pennsylvania had a tremendous style furniture, and caning was part of it there, and so that's where it became famous. But I hope you will see why I appreciate that, because that's a and I was telling Jane a while ago, that would go as good on a double wide redneck trailer as it would in a Buckhead condo. Whereas this thing over there is nice for wood, you know, stuff like that, but you know, but it just according to your taste, you know, it doesn't really matter, but I've enjoyed working on those things, and dear old Eleanor, bless her heart, she's up in the 90s now, and Alzheimer's and all of this stuff, but I made Eleanor a nesting set for her home in Osterville, and so she has that, but if you go to Nantucket, that's Nantucket's peanuts. In Georgia, everywhere you go, you got peanuts in Georgia. But you go to Nantucket, they have Nantucket Baskets, and they have all kinds of stuff, all kinds of baskets. But they're always round or have an arc on it. They're not very square. Some are doing it, but Nantucket, I don't think, likes it because they've got this style, you know, that, but they're all made on a mold of some sort, too. And so that's a point not to be ignored. But if any of you want to use a mold, I'll be glad to help you get started on it and help you get going on it, because this is an exciting thing. To me, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing.
How do you fasten the hasp and clasp and stuff on the ones with the top lid?
Oh, the lid, it comes with a, I don't know whether it has a peg on it or not. No, it doesn't. What I did, and I called Perkins about it, and she said, what you do is you drill a little hole into the back, and you put a little nail in there, and glue it with epoxy, and then you set it into your wood and glue it all over, and the nails keep it from sliding off. And so that's the way that holds. But anything else?
Hey, Wayne,
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here and say this would be a perfect thing to do at the woodworking show.
It would show our versatility.
Yeah.
Bob, do you agree?
Great job, Carl. Can you learn in the next 3 weeks?
I can do the weaving once we get past the halfway point with all this other stuff. But it was interesting as I ran into a guy, this has been 20 years ago, and didn't realize it. I was going to, from Kingsland, going on to, I forgot the island now, down north, South Georgia. From Kingsland, you go out, Cumberland Island, and the guy who makes the baskets out there, which is noted of that area, and he makes them out of pine.
The pine straw.
Out of the pine straw.
Oh, the pine straw. Pine straw is one of the. I would think that pine straw is probably one of the upper kind of baskets.
But I didn't realize he was on the thing going back and forth. That was the only way back, and I didn't know him. And I walked on, and then I met him over there. I bought one. He has since died, and there were some articles on Channel 8 and whatever about the baskets. But I'm just saying. So everybody was giving this guy money on the boat. Get me a basket when you get it done, and give me a basket when it gets done. I didn't know back then, so I gave him $20 or whatever, and send me a basket. Well, about a year and a half later, in the mail, and in just a funny cardboard box, I got this basket. But I'm saying this guy just because it takes 10 to 15 to 20, 30 hours, to make these things.
They have somebody at John C. Campbell teaches that.
Yeah.
Well, I think when you really take it seriously, in other words, if you're going to do it, by God, do it. If you're just going to mess around, bitch around with it,
or horse.
But anyway, you get my point. If you're going to do it, do it. And if you're making, as I've done on other things too, if you're going to make a piece of crap, for a piece of crap, like I made a common bird house, and it had a lot of crap on it because it was a common bird. It had a commode in the front yard, and it had beer cans all over the place. And so if you're going to do it, do it. But if you're going to make something classy,
And we're in the redneck area versus Buckhead.
then make that classy too. And,
Double wide birdhouse.
Yeah, double wide.
Well, it was a double wide. Had a refrigerator on the front porch and a recliner on the front porch, and a pulpwood saw and some firewood, and a clothesline on the front porch that connected to the side, with a pair of shorts and bra and panties and a pair of blue jeans hanging on it, in the front yard, All of which is to, if you're going to do it,
Accentuated.
Wayne made or gave me what, 6 or 8 of the classic birdhouses, and they were to donate to, by way of turn, to the DNR, because they have a big fancy cloisters activity. One gal walked in there, saw them, and bought the whole damn bunch.
You didn't have them priced high enough then.
Huh? Well, I didn't price them.
No, but I'm just saying.
well, you ought to see my Baptist birdhouse. It's a beautiful birdhouse with a cupola on the top and everything, and octagonal and classy looking, and just right to hide your bottle of wine when the preacher comes by. And so but if you're gonna do it, do it. Anything else?
Doesn't have anything in it but back seats, right?
I was gonna say, it doesn't have a pew in it, a front pew.
But you think that's good, y'all